So we need to talk about Wayfinder. This is a game that released in early access in August 2023, and its initial business model was going to be somewhat similar to that of Warframe. Now, for those of you that are not familiar with Warframe, this is an always online, free-to-play, and I'm going to go ahead and say action RPG slash third-person shooter slash space ninja simulator slash spaceship combat slash open world. It gets kind of hard to really define all of the things that Warframe is doing because Warframe's been around for quite a few years, and I'm not trying to say this in a bad way. I think that it's a good thing, the ways in which they've expanded the different types of gameplay that you can actually get in Warframe. But let me know if you feel that my description of the game is accurate or not, because it's been quite a number of years since I personally last played Warframe. But fundamentally, the whole point of playing Warframe is to go ahead and collect these different things called Warframes that work kind of like classes in a standard RPG. So a Warframe could be something like a warrior or a wizard or an archer or something along those lines, except there's a ton of them and each of them fulfills different archetypes when it comes to the whole Warframe hierarchy, so to speak. You have all of these different Warframes that you can play, each of them providing you with a different playstyle. Now, beyond just the Warframes themselves, you can also get different weapons, and each weapon in Warframe is almost like a character unto itself because of the ways in which you can mod these weapons to achieve different results. And fundamentally, you can grind for all of these things whenever you play Warframe. Everything that has any type of gameplay effect can be achieved by simply playing through the game and grinding the required resources to craft the thing that you want. However, the business model of Warframe consists of you also being able to pay to skip that grind. You can just pay and get yourself a Warframe if that's something that you want. You're like, oh, I want this specific Warframe, and rather than grind for it, I want it right now. You can pay money and you can get that Warframe. Same thing for the weapons. You're like, oh, I really like this weapon. I want to get it right now. You can pay and you can get it. Now, they have like this rotation thing, I believe, nowadays, wherein not all Warframes are available at all times because stuff gets vaulted. And I don't know the specifics of that, but fundamentally, this is their business model. Now, beyond just selling you the different Warframes and the weapons and all that stuff, they also sell you cosmetics that let you customize your character and really, make it your own. You can also customize this spaceship that you get. There's all different types of customizations, as you can imagine, for an always online, free-to-play multiplayer game. Let me know in the comment section down below if you feel that I'm not describing the business model accurately, but I believe that this is the case. And I also believe that, like I said, anything that has an effect on gameplay can be achieved simply through playing the game. Cosmetics, on the other hand, that's a little bit of a different story, I would imagine, but you guys get the idea. You guys get what this business model is. And this is what the business model of Wayfinder was initially going to be. As a matter of fact, Wayfinder was being published by Digital Extremes, who are the creators of Warframe. So it just kind of made sense to do this synergistic partnership because, you have the Wayfinders that kind of act like the Warframes. You have the weapons in Wayfinder that are somewhat similar to the weapons in Warframe. You have the echoes in Wayfinder, which are very similar to the mods that you have in Warframe. And all of these things kind of work in a very similar way. And this is why that partnership just kind of made sense. Now, unfortunately, a couple of things happened when Wayfinder got released. So one of the first things was Wayfinder was actually way more popular than Airship Syndicate, who are the makers of Wayfinder, initially predicted. So what ended up happening was the server infrastructure that was being ran by Digital Extremes was completely overloaded when Wayfinder went live. The servers started exploding, people were getting stuck in queues, people weren't able to log into the game, and people were really, and justifiably so, upset. So a lot of people went ahead and requested refunds. A lot of people kept going at it and trying to jump into the game. But this situation took a significant amount of time to get resolved, which, as you can imagine, caused some severe damage to the initial release of Wayfinder. It is what it is. Server problems, people getting refunds, people complaining about the state of the game, which there was even the whole meme about Wayfinder because everybody was stuck in queue trying to log into the game. This is something that we've all seen for several multiplayer games. I'm not saying this is something that we should accept. I'm not saying that this is something that should be normalized, but naturally this is something that we've seen 1,000 times over. So eventually Airship Syndicate, they get to work in partnership with Digital Extremes to try and solve the situation, and eventually they were able to get things running. Naturally, the initial hype also died down, which means less users trying to jump into the game, and which eventually meant that they were able to get everybody into the servers and actually playing the game. And when people got to play the game was actually pretty fun. I can confirm that I played over 150 hours of the original Wayfinder, and I really enjoyed it. However, I should also mention that grind was really grindy. Specifically for me to get siloed, that took me so friggin' long. It was absolutely insane. Similar business model to Warframe. Everything's running now. Sure, there was that initial hit from the popularity of the game because a lot of people just kind of ditched after they failed to launch the game properly with the server stability and all of that stuff. But the game was running, the game was going, and Airship Syndicate was prepared to start implementing their development going forward, because the whole plan was they were going to support this early access game over a long period of years, very much in the same way that Warframe did their own thing. They were going to do something very similar, but with Wayfinder. And again, this is why that partnership with Digital Extremes was so important. However, another thing happened shortly after they were able to solve the server situation and get everybody in and playing the game. And what happened was, once Wayfinder was somewhat stable, Digital Extremes decided to go ahead and close down their publishing side of things. And what does this mean? This means that not just Wayfinder, I actually don't know how many other games they were publishing. I know that they're also working on Soulframe, but that's developed in-house, so that's still on the dock to keep being developed and whatnot. But other games that Digital Extremes was publishing, they basically all got cut loose. And this, as you can imagine, is a significant problem when you have a studio that is the size of Airship Syndicate, which is about a head count of 80 people. Something along those lines is my understanding. And all of a sudden, they're completely on their own. They had this business model with a synergistic partnership that made a lot of sense in the form of Digital Extremes, because these were the guys who made Warframe, which was essentially the same business model that they were implementing in Wayfinder. And now they're kind of like on their own, having to figure out all of this stuff by themselves. The server architecture and how that was going to work, the different business model and how they were going to work with that business model moving forward. They simply don't have the help of this partner anymore. So what they did was they changed things up, and they decided to go ahead and, okay, we're going to go and we are going to start developing a version of this game that can be played without being always online. And we're going to go ahead and we're going to try to shop for another third-party publisher that can publish our game, so that we can support all of these network infrastructure costs and all of this stuff, because they couldn't afford it as an independent studio. And therein lies the problem and the situation that we find ourselves in today, which was essentially they shopped around for what I believe was like 3 months. During that time, according to what I was told, the server costs and infrastructure costs and all of this stuff was coming directly out of their own pocket. And, this was simply something that was not going to be sustainable, and eventually the studio was going to tank, and they weren't going to be able to continue to support this forever. This is one of the reasons why they partnered with Digital Extremes to begin with, because they knew they weren't going to be able to support a live service game with their studio infrastructure. They were going to need a partner in order to do that, right? And so fast forward to today, they've announced last week, or was it the week before? I don't know. Time is very strange for me nowadays. But fundamentally, they announced, hey, we're doing this change to the game. The game is going to become single player with peer-to-peer co-op, as opposed to being a live service game like we had initially planned. Now, naturally, this is not what the team wanted to do. This was quite simply, hey, we can do this, or we cannot have a game anymore. Now, I have a small excerpt that I retrieved from the podcast that I did with that team, which, in case you guys weren't aware, because YouTube notifications and all of that, I did a podcast with the game director as well as the community manager last week. We also did a live stream where I played, and I got to play on a more advanced save that showcased a little bit of the new Frost March. For those of you that are familiar with Wayfinder, Frost March is now friggin' massive, as opposed to just a small little quest hub as it used to be, which was really cool. Had a blast playing the game. I still greatly enjoyed the gameplay and all that. But I got a little excerpt from the podcast that we did that shows you all of the relevant parts in regards to the change in business model, the monetization, the stuff from Digital Extremes and all of that. This is about 5 minutes. I'm going to play it for you guys right now. However, note that this is edited for brevity, and I will be linking you in the description of this video to the timestamp where you can watch the whole thing, and you can get the whole, because you're like, oh, you've edited this, you've cut away things. You can watch the whole thing. There's like 2 hours of podcast with me talking to these guys in great detail about everything that is coming to Wayfinder Echoes. So if you want to get additional content, you can get it there.
When Digital Extremes shut down their publishing branch and basically were like, hey, we're on our own now. Like, we had to evaluate our options and quickly get over the fact this sucks. Woe is me. And it's like, okay, now what do we do about it? We can't just let the game die like that. Like, there's so much potential there. Like, it's gone so far, and like it can't die. So it's like, what can we do? And like what if it was just like you buy it once and you just play it, and it's like, how the hell are we going to turn, the game into that? It's so different. Yeah. And then it's like, all right, well, let's just start thinking about it and like going down, like, we can convert this. And then very quickly after, it's like, holy cow, this game is way cooler. Like, I much rather play this. And feedback we've gotten has been the same. Like, people that have played it, like testers, a few people that got a sneak peek, like ourselves, like playing the game, like it's just way more fun. So it's like, it's the silver lining is the game's actually way cooler, and I enjoy it a lot more playing it. And I think a lot of people, like you, will enjoy it a lot. And like the alternative wasn't really like keep it live service or make it single, like single player and co-op off, not offline, but
peer-to-peer.
Yeah, peer-to-peer
co-op.
Or it's gone forever and no one gets to play it in any form. So I think that
we tried. We tried to find a third approach. There's 3, like straight up. We found out the news basically at the same time as I think some people in the studio probably learned from Polygon and the other publications sooner than we did. But it was just like, okay, well, hey, our leadership came down and like told us as soon as they knew as well, and it's like, it's still gonna be around. We're still gonna make this happen. We're gonna keep looking for new publishers. We're gonna try to invest that, but just everybody sees what's going on in the industry. Yeah. It's brutal out there.
Yeah,
like,
we were basically planning for both. Yeah. And as we basically had the choice of we can start thinking about converting it, and while we're looking to get a partner to keep it up and running. If we wait until we find out we can't get a partner, it's too late. Like, we've wasted all that time. So we were kind of like figuring out both at the same time. We went through a lot of planning because we couldn't really just mess around and be like, oh, well, what if we do this? We had to have a very like specific plan, like in a short time. So another aspect of it was we didn't get money from the sales and everything. So this was all we were putting in our own money to like extend, like how much are we willing to put in so that we can get players something that they can stick around and play with. Like, it wasn't like, oh, we'll take all that revenue we got and put that towards converting it and then just walk away with all of those profits. We didn't get any profits. So we, like, as soon as we shifted over, the details, the fine details are all specific, but the game was expensive to make. So like, it's not like Digital Extremes didn't like break the bank and be like, yeah, we're out of here, we made so much money. That's not the case. It sucks for everybody.
And there were also a ton of refunds at the launch situation.
Yeah, so it's not like there's some master criminals. Like it was no like, I enjoyed working with DE and everything. It sucks what happened, but we don't. It's not like we had like all of this money to be like, oh well, let's just cut loose and we'll just sail away with our money. So we again, like, thinking about those players, like, our thoughts were, would it be better if the game didn't exist, or if there was something there that they can still play? Because as far as refunds, like, we don't have their money to give back. Like, it's not like
We never got it.
Yeah, we don't have it.
We
So-
don't have
It's
anything
like
back.
digital
And we weren't
extremes and servers and all of that stuff. Yeah, I can
Yeah.
imagine, because
And-
publishing deals and yeah. So, Wayfinder is no longer going to be a live service game. It is now going to be a single player game with peer-to-peer co-op. Now, for me personally, this is actually a good thing. I prefer this particular business model wherein I can just buy the game and not have to worry about season passes and other FOMO stuff that a lot of these games tend to have. I don't have to worry about the amount of grinding that it is going to require to do something, and the financial motivation that a lot of times developers get to kind of artificially increase that grind to see if they can squeeze a couple more dollars out of some players. I don't really have to worry about any of that now. I can just kind of like play the game and enjoy it. To me, this is something much, much better for my personal tastes, but I can completely understand that for a lot of people, this is not what they sign on for, particularly if you happen to be one of the persons who bought the Exalted pack, which was, I believe, was like $150 or something like that. If you were one of the people that bought one of those Exalted packs and you're like, oh, this is going to be a game that I'm going to be playing for years with a similar business model to that of Warframe, this is going to be absolutely awesome. I can completely understand where you're at, and I've seen a lot of you guys, in not just in my comment section, I've also seen it in Steam posts and all of this stuff that you guys are like, hey, this is not cool, this is not what I signed on for, I wanted an MMO. But fundamentally, the situation that we had was we either have this game or we have nothing. And to be quite honest, we've seen a lot of people just basically cut and run when it comes to developers when they're trying to work on a live service game and that live service game doesn't take off. They're very quick to like, well, that didn't work out, let's just cancel it, boom, done. You can see, I mean, Wildstar, I'm not going to say it was one of the ones that they cut and run super fast or anything like that, because I'm not super familiar with it, but I do remember that Wildstar was one of those MMOs that was around for a while. Eventually they saw this isn't really sustainable, canceled the game. Firefall is another one that I can remember. I played the crap out of Firefall, really enjoyed that game. That game's gone now. It doesn't exist in any way. To be honest, I would have rather Firefall was still around as an offline game if that was an option, but it is what it is. And like that, I'm sure that each of you guys can think of a live service game that you used to play that is gone now and doesn't exist in any way, shape, or form. So to me, the game still existing, that's a cool thing, and I'm actually happy that developers at least are trying to make the game still work. However, that's not really going to be something that's going to matter for some of you guys that paid $150 for an Exalted version of the game, and now you're not getting what you wanted. Now, when it comes to this Exalted stuff, the bonuses that you would get from the Exalted pack, you still get those, but in the single-player / co-op version of the game. But again, it is a different value proposition, I would assume, because if you value the multiplayer aspects of the game more than having all of the content, then I can understand where you're coming from. Now, when it comes to the whole refund situation, as you can tell, that's one of the reasons why I wanted to play that excerpt ahead of the video. The money is not necessarily on the side of Airship Syndicate. You can say that maybe they're lying. I don't know. All I know is what I've been told in the interview that I kind of did with them during that conscast. And, I don't know how we can ever really know unless they come up with the receipts and all of that stuff. But naturally, as you can imagine, financial dealings and whatnot, all of those things are going to be under NDA or whatever. And only the two companies involved are actually going to know the actual numbers. Now, at the end of the day, Digital Extremes was the publisher, so it does make sense that they were the ones handling the bulk of the revenue, because they're probably also the ones who contributed with a bulk of the money to get the game created. That's usually how publishers work, I think. They put in an investment of money so that the game can get made, and then they're going to get royalties on that game. That's my understanding of it. Feel free to correct me if you happen to know more about this subject than me. But it is what it is. Here's what I can tell you when it comes to Airship Syndicate. When the stuff went down with the problems that they had with login servers and all of this stuff, one of the things that they did very quickly was they said, we are going to give you guys something to make up for this. I believe it was digital goods in the worth of like $28 or something like that. I covered the compensation packages that they were doing for the players. I covered that at the time, and I believe it was around $28 of digital goods. that people got for being around during the launch and the Rocky launch and all of that stuff. Whether or not that's enough, that's going to depend. Like for a player that paid $20, which was the original early access price for the lowest tier, which I bought the PlayStation 5 version of that tier because I also wanted to play it on PlayStation. And then you get $28 in digital goods. I was like, that seems somewhat fair, but, for the people that paid more, obviously that's going to be somewhat different. But another thing that Airship Syndicate did the moment that they had publishing control over Wayfinders was they immediately stopped selling the game. This might be something that people are not aware, but they instantly were like, okay, stop selling the game, at least on Steam. I don't know how it works on PlayStation, because usually when it comes to PlayStation, the publishing, the way that publishing works there is quite different than other platforms, very much like Xbox. Steam is a little bit easier to work with, is my understanding. And if you're a developer, maybe you can weigh in on that. But basically, the moment they were able to, they stopped selling the game because they knew that, we're on our own now. We're not sure what the future of this game is going to be. That's going to be insane. So they shopped around for the publisher. They weren't able to get another publisher to support them. Probably also because of the initial negative perception of Wayfinder, based on the fact that the servers exploded. A lot of publishers were like, I don't really want to take a chance on this right now, especially on the current economic market that we have, which is absolutely insane. But fundamentally, after all of that, they just decided to do this offline version thing as kind of like a last-ditch effort to be able to at least have something for the players that enjoyed it. Now, their intention, from what I was told during the podcast, is they want to support the game further, but naturally it needs to make financial sense because, if the game sells well, they can keep supporting it. If the game doesn't sell well, then they're not going to be able to support it. Now, I understand that this is not going to be what everybody wanted to hear. In case you want refunds, I've asked them about refunds. They said you got to work with the platform. So if you're on PlayStation, you got to try to get a refund through them. If you're on Steam, you got to try to get a refund through them. They are trying to help people out as best as they can on their official Discord. So you can also look up the Wayfinder Discord, try to get your refund that way. I mean, not get the refund directly through them, but get some help as to what you can argue in terms of getting a refund. Because I remember even during the early days, if people had spent longer than 2 hours in queue, they had like this step-by-step instruction thing to help you get a refund through Steam. They're still trying to help people out with that stuff, especially if you're like one of the bigger backers. Maybe there's something that they can do for you there. We don't know what the situation is going to be with that, but fundamentally, a lot of the changes that are coming to the game, in my opinion, make it a better game. But again, like I said, this is going to be debatable depending on the type of player that you are. If you want an MMO with a better social experience, you're not going to be convinced by my arguments. But, a couple of things that you can now do better in Wayfinder is it's easier to unlock Wayfinders. Like, you start the game in 1 or 2 hours in, you gain access already to the 3 base Wayfinders. And then the materials that you need to unlock further Wayfinders, the grind for that has been significantly reduced because they no longer need to have that mandatory engagement grind, which, to me, it's like that. This seems like a good thing. It's easier to get Wayfinders. I don't get that much satisfaction from grinding the same monster over 100 times like I did to get some of the materials that I needed for Silo, especially when my friends already had 7 of the material and I had like 2. So unlocking Wayfinders is easier. There's a lot of quality of improvements to the way that echoes work now in the game. This was probably going to be something that was going to be implemented in the live service version of the game as well. But, weapons now, instead of just being crafted, they just straight up drop. So you now have weapon drops with different, echo slots. So you basically have a little bit of randomization there as well. So you're just playing through the game now and a weapon drops, which is something that would never happen previously because you would have to always get materials in order to be able to craft the weapon. So that makes the game a little bit more interesting there. There's also multiple difficulties. So if you want to just play the game on an easier difficulty, that is something that you can do. To me, this is actually not a massive benefit. And I've said as much in the podcast. I was like, I prefer games that just push the difficulty as hard and as challenging as it can be. and then focus on balancing that, because often what ends up happening whenever games have all of these different difficulties is a lot of enemies just become like damage sponges, and on top of it, they also deal so much damage that they just one-shot you. So it just becomes more of a how patient are you type of thing, where it's like, okay, just fight this fight for 20 minutes instead of 10. You know, that's not necessarily something that I consider to be harder, just more tedious. I don't know how the difficulty is going to feel like in this, because I haven't played that much yet, considering that the version that you have access to right now, which is a closed beta version that I think goes away on Tuesday or something like that, that version of the game is going to wipe. And I'm waiting for the final version, which for those of us that have a Founders Pack or whatever, that's going to be on the 31st of May. And then I'm going to be grinding the game and really testing stuff out and seeing how it feels. But I did play a little bit during this weekend, and what I played of it, I was like, this feels pretty good. This feels a lot more fun. I don't have to worry about whether or not the servers are going to be in maintenance or exploding, or if there's too many players logging in or whatever. If there's enough players for me to do a specific event, I can just play the game and enjoy it. And that was pretty much what I was doing even when it was live service. When I did play with people and I teamed up with people, it would usually be my friends. So I can still do that. So to me, that works. But again, I understand it's not going to be the same for everyone. However, a nice upside to this is that also every single cosmetic they've ever done in the game is now unlockable through gameplay. And I think that this is actually going to show for, you know, the people that actually choose to give it a chance. And by the way, I'm not advocating for you giving it a chance or not. I'm just telling you, I like it. If you don't want to deal with it, that's your business, not mine. But fundamentally, I think that this can be almost like a case study, because I feel like there's a lot of live service games out there that would actually be better games if they weren't live services. But that's just my opinion. We'll see how things pan out. Personally, I'm excited to check it out. I'm excited for the changes. I think that this makes it more in line with the things that I personally like about a game. And I'm really sorry for all of the players that, you know, were expecting this to become the next Warframe, and they didn't get that. But I'm very curious to see what is going to happen if the game is actually successful enough, and if the developers actually put some more effort into it in producing more and more content. I think things could get really, really interesting. But we'll see how it pans out, because at this point, it's all speculation. Who knows what is going to happen, other than, you know, the game does now support single-player co-op. And that's another thing. It's kind of impressive that they were able to transform a live service game into a single-player co-op game in a span of like 3 months. That's crazy. But yeah, I'll be covering more of this, and I'll be streaming more of it here on the channel after the 31st, when the game actually goes into its final cycle where stuff is not going to wipe anymore, because this is a game that has a ton of grind. I'm not going to jump in and start grinding only to have that be deleted later. You know, I already played a decent chunk of it. If you want to see some gameplay, there's like, we streamed 2 hours of gameplay of Frost March, and it was me and the community manager and even the game director join us for a little bit. And it was a ton of fun. I think the gameplay of the game is still a ton of fun. That's the most important part to me. But let me know what you guys think about all of this in the comment section down below. I believe that the team is likely going to be watching this video as well. So if there's any comments that you'd like to leave, all of that stuff, leave those in the comments section. And yeah, that's going to be it for now. If you guys enjoyed this video, hit the like button. If you did not enjoy this video, hit the dislike button. Feedback is important. And if you want more, subscribe, bell notification icon, all of that jazz. We're also going to be covering a ton of like Elden Ring, potentially even Dawn Trail when that gets released. And obviously, once summer hits, there's a lot of Monster Hunter news. So yeah, I'll see you guys then. Stay strong, stay safe. Peace out.